Is it time? I can't wait to see it.
Voice of the people, stories that matter.
Oh wow! Aha!
Truth in every moment, now and forever. Across every border, across every land, we form, we empower, together we stand. From Africa to the world, connecting every voice.
In the book of Genesis, the Bible made us to understand that after creation, on the sixth day, God said, "Let us make man in our own image and likeness." And so God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit came together and created man out of the dust of the earth, and then breathed into it, and man became a living being. Along the line, it was discovered that man, as a human being, cannot be left to survive alone, because from all of God's creation, there was none fit to be the companion for the man. And so God made man to fall into a deep sleep, and then took from his side and made woman. And when she was brought, he exclaimed, "Truly, this is the bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh." And then God gave man the directive to go, be fruitful, and multiply. If you look at the second account and go to the Garden of Eden, Adam was created, and his responsibility was to look over the garden. And when he named the creations of God, and still there was none fit for him, of course, woman, Eve, was brought to him as his wife. And so, however you want to look at it, a man is incomplete without a woman. And so, it is on this note that I welcome you to Main's World. And you might wonder, why is he alone? I'm not alone. I have my brother and friend and colleague. Together, we will be piloting the affairs on Main's World. Tammy, good evening. How are you today?
I'm doing wonderfully well, Francis. Good evening to you as well, and good evening to all our wonderful listeners and watchers out there, all the men that have been craving for that safe space where you get to hear people talk about problems that relate to you, problems that you can understand, and situations that only someone else, only another man can get. That is what this program is for here on CEMTV, and this is a greeting to every single one of you.
And indeed, while we talk about, who a man is and what a man is supposed to be and is not supposed to be, in the general context in the world, it is believed that a man is a man because of his level of perseverance and his ability to provide. And so, when a man is not able to persevere, when a man seems not to have the stamina to withstand the trials, the ordeals, and different challenges in life, when a man shows even the slightest, form of weakness, or what the world will perceive as weakness, he's called a she-man or not being fit to be a man. But the question and the concern comes down to this: is provision and endurance the hallmark, or should it be what forms the truest definition of who a man is? On CEMTV's Men's World, we have two segments. The first segment, we call it the Men's Parlor. And like my brother said, this is where you have the liberty as a man to say it all as it is, without fear of being judged, without the concerns of what society might say or may not say about you or your mindset. It's a safe space where you're able to hear from other men and they can also hear from you. And together we learn, we build, and we grow with each other. I'm tempted, Tommy, to take your mind to the movie, The Forge.
Yeah.
Where men came together and then mentored each other, stood by each other through the different challenges they each went through. And at the end of the day, they all triumphed.
Yeah.
And this is where we are, the safe space for each and every one of us. Now, the first thing that comes to mind when you talk about men's parlor, everybody will readily go to the beer parlor.
Yeah, unfortunately. That's what most people will think about immediately.
Yeah. So the thought would be, oh, it's another place for us to go have, a pint of beer or two. Yeah, but excuse me, I'm wondering what exactly is happening, but I think I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah, and things like, when I think those things, I would call them stereotypes. These are some things that they expect a man to do. They expect that, okay, if a man is in a place that has the parlor in it, is either at home in the parlor watching the news, or he's in the beer parlor with his friends, or he's in the, dare I say, sports parlor, making some bets and trying to gamble with what little money he has. But the men's parlor is just going to be a bit different, in the sense that none of those stereotypes will be, taken into account. It's just going to be a place where we talk about things, we address issues, we address claims, because of course we know the opposite gender, they may, or even some people of the same gender, they may try to lay certain claims against the gender as a whole, but the men's parlor is where we address those claims, tell you if they're right or wrong, and give you our own 2 cents on it.
Definitely. So the first question we're going to ask, leading us into the very first segment, which is the men's parlor. And just before we get into, the conversation, the very first conversation we're bringing to you, remembering the fact that this is the maiden edition of Men's World, the second segment of the show is titled The Test and Trial. Because in a man's life, we will have these events. We have the tests and we have the trials that, comes to test us and really shake us up, whether it's about career path, is about the ministry, is about the family, or even about means of being a man in the space where you find yourself. So these 2 segments are the guide that we will be dishing out. And of course, as we progress, you are going to be part and parcel of what we are doing, because on social media platform at CEMTVPLUS, and of course, we will be having some studio guests and giving you the opportunity from anywhere in the world. You can join us eventually via video calls, or link up messages, or leave us messages on social media, especially as it concerns our collective growth and well-being. And we will make sure that whatever you share with us comes here live on CEMTV Men's World. Now, Tommy, I'll start with you, and I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
In categorizing the different generations, I'll start with the Gen Zs and the millennial. Now, you represent the Gen Zs.
Of course.
I represent the millennial. So I'll start from you.
Okay.
When the word is a man, or the phrase is a man is mentioned, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? Or if you want to define yourself as a man, what would you say?
Okay, you see, like you said, you are putting me on the spot because this is a very, very tricky question because there are several definitions of a man depending on the generation you are from or the society you are raised in. You know, in this current generation, most people aren't really even sure what or who a man is or should be, which is why we see a lot of people having issues with gender identity and so on and so forth. Most people are thinking, okay, you know, it's outdated to think that a man is a provider. It's outdated to think that a man is, you know, the sole beneficiary of his household. It's outdated to think that the man is meant to be the head of the family, or perhaps maybe God even made a mistake, you know, making the man first. So in this current generation, I can't necessarily give you what our generation sees as a man, because you hear from one side, some people say, oh, a man is someone who provides everything, who takes care of his family, and then on the other end, you see some people telling you that men that do that are toxic. You know, they're controlling, they're domineering. And then you see some other people saying that, oh, a man is someone who, you know, trusts freely, opens up his heart. And on the flip side, you see some people that will tell you that a man that opens up his heart or that trusts freely is naive. He's not a man, because a man is staunch, a man is, you know, closed off. So I can't give you a generational definition of a man. But from my definition of a man, I believe a man is someone who thrives through adversity, is someone who doesn't allow his circumstance to hold him down, is someone that knows when to be strong and when to let go, someone that is confident in who he is. He is not, you know, affected by the tides and waves of, you know, some other people's success. He doesn't feel envy, or let me not say he doesn't feel envy. He doesn't let envy consume him. He doesn't let jealousy consume him. He thrives in his labor, and he acknowledges what he does, and he's proud of himself regardless of where he is in life, as long as he knows where he wants to go to. So if you ask me, that is the definition of a man. But if you're asking for my generation as a whole, I can't give you a specific answer on that.
Okay, that suffices, because you have covered the three core areas of who a man is. You're talking about a personal identity of a man. You're talking about, you know, the social identity of a man. You're talking about the role identity of a man. So from personal to, you know, the role that God has entrusted to us as providers, as fathers, as, you know, the leaders of our home, and, you know, in the larger society. And then the social, engaging with others, being able to integrate the thoughts of others and carry other people's along, respecting their minds, respecting their opinions, respecting their, you know, rights and privileges. These three core areas are what defines a man. Now, the first one, value, you know, comes down to value, belief system. It comes down to passion and hobbies, and of course the ability of what is being framed in the world now as they call it emotional intelligence, to deal with issues, situations, and people. Now you leave that to the role you're looking at, a man's role as a protector, as a provider, and also a progenitor, which means a lot is expected, around us. And of course, it takes us into career, fatherhood, being a husband, being a responsible son, being an uncle, and every other attachment that is linked to it. And then you move to the social. Of course, you're going to come to the cultural and religious background that you highlighted earlier on. And of course, this culture, religious setting, and even socioeconomic backgrounds also contributes to the personality of the man. But at the end of the day, when you put all of this together, for me, as a man representing the millennial mindset now, I know that we are the sum total of our belief system. We're the sum total of our cultural, grounding, our religious standing, and the sum total of our social capital or social currency, as well as the ability or the strength and stamina that we are able to pull up when situation comes, when our emotional, stability and confidence is tested. So defining who a man is, personally, I wrote down in my journal a long time ago that I want to go down in history as a man who was a father whose children could relate with, as a leader, as a father, as a friend, as a mentor and a role model. That when they sit in the entirety of their life, they can always reference back to say, oh, my father was the first person I saw stood by the principles of fairness, justice, honesty, decency, the dignity of hard work. I want, I wrote it down. I wanted my children to have at the back of their mind that when my father says no, it meant no. As long as that no was in line with the right principles, the right values that every right thinking person across the surface of the earth would agree with. I wanted my wife to remember me as the man who came into her life, led her to God, and consistently led the family before God, and as a matter of fact, ordered the family in agreement with the God ordained order of leadership, of love, of provision. And for the larger society, friends, colleagues, the story of the Good Samaritan and the question of Jesus was always in my mind. When, after narrating the story, he asked of the two, the priest and the Levite that passed, and of course the Samaritan, which of these was the brother, the true brother to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And of course the answer was the Good Samaritan. And that therefore took my mind to understand that the primary reason why we are who we are is not just for us to put the light for ourselves, but also to light the path for others to follow. And in doing so, there are different, proverbial saying that points a mind to the fact that when you point the light for others to see, you are indirectly pointing the light for yourselves. Because as time goes on, little drops of ocean, little drops of kindness, as much as we know there are scenarios where out of the 10, just one will return. But that one that return makes all the difference. That for me has been the definition of a real man, a man that is grounded in character, a man that is grounded in values, a man that is grounded in love and empathy and compassion, a man that is devoted, that is passionate, that is absolutely loyal. And when you sum that up, for me, that is the identity that that reminds me of who a man should be and the man that I want to be. Unfortunately, in today's society, we are no longer looking at the core values, the core principles that should make who a man is. The generation that we are in, we have shifted to define a man by the account balance that he has,
by his capabilities,
his ability to make money, and of course by the social capital that he has. Who do you know in the society? Whose contacts do you have? What can you do when situation arises? Who can you pull into your corner when the unexpected twist of life comes to shore? But we forget that in the wake of prioritizing material gains or material wealth to define who a man is and what man is better than the other man, we have consciously created an attitude of getting it regardless of how you go about it. So we're now having men, especially within the political space, who will do just anything to become anything. We're looking at men who would go the extra mile to make money, especially the younger generation. So we now have the proliferation of what we call the internet guys or the Yahoo boys. You go to different parts of the world, you would find young people who are no longer eager to dignify themselves by working hard to get what they want or to get to where they need to be in terms of material possession.
Yeah.
You find young women who are more interested in doing just anything,
Yeah.
as long as it brings the money. And then you find parents who, even from parents who are from above the millennial ages,
era.
who are now very comfortable throwing away the values that they grew up with and they trained us to grow up with, to just accept anything as long as there is money.
There's money,
So-
or there's some good attached
to it. So even in families, parents now treat children depending on how much you have. That you would find the first son who is not so wealthy, who is barely getting by, being disrespected by the second or the third child or the last born of the family, simply because the last born is materially wealthy than the firstborn.
first.
All of this imbalance comes back to one concern, which is why we are here. Imagine being the firstborn son, and then instead of being the leader of the family and coordinating your brothers and sisters to deal with issues at home, you are sidelined, you're disrespected, you're disregarded because of the unfortunate circumstance of you not being wealthy as your younger ones. That is one of the biggest pressure that men are facing today.
It is indeed one of the biggest pressures that weighs on the shoulder of every man, which is why you'd see, and I use that word man sparingly, because it has gotten to a point where it now weighs down on children. You'd see boys of 12, 13, 14 talking about how they want to become millionaires, talking about how they need to make money, talking about how they need to get cars, and you look at them and you said you have a minimum of about, or rather you have as much as 10 years to figure out your life, and you still will not be considered an adult by some people. At the age you're in, if I give you 10 more years, I still won't see you as a full adult, because you're barely into, or rather you've barely left adolescence. So this mindset, it doesn't just weigh on the man, it weighs on the male gender. You'd see women, you'd see mothers, you'd even see some fathers looking at their kids and telling them, you better hurry up and make money. And you look at the boy, you're like, this boy is just in secondary school. You're asking someone who is planning to write WAEC, planning to write, their NECO, and you're telling them, I hope as you're going into school, you're going to make sure you make money. And you're like, are you going to the school? I understand that you're wishing for the success of your child and you want them to make use of any avenue that is given to them. But of course, the university is a whole universe of its own. You can get some right connections and do something useful with your life. But that should not be the focus. It shouldn't be a matter of, I'm sending you to this school because I want you to, find a way to get successful from it. It shouldn't be a matter of, I'm sending you to this school so that you can learn what you need to learn and become successful for the sole purpose of taking care of me. It should be a matter of sending this person to the school and telling them, learn as much as you want to learn or you need to learn. Better yourself in both character and learning. In that case, the only responsibility you're putting on their shoulders is the fact that I'm taking you to school so that you can become a better person. Not so that you can make money or you can become the richest person or you will become someone I can then feel proud enough to brag about to some other people. So this, I would call it a pandemic, because a lot of people are still facing it till date. You see someone that is barely in their 20s, 25, 26, and they're being questioned as to why they don't have a car. They're being questioned as to why they don't have their own houses. And you look at them and you're like, So when did this become the norm? Some of our parents worked until they were in their late 40s.
Until they retired.
Until they retired, before they got their own places. So when did we get to a point where someone in his 20s is expected to have enough money to hold the most extravagant wedding the world has ever seen? Should have enough money that any lady that comes his way should be lavished in riches, should be baptized in his hard work and his money. So this, for me, is a pandemic that does not just affect men, but also affects the boy child. Because I'm sure even you grew up, you must have grown up, hearing these things as a child, being told that, your responsibility as a man is to become successful and take care of your family, take care of your children. Not many people talk about what it takes for you as a man to take care of yourself. You need to grow mentally, you need to be stable psychologically in order to be the man they want you to be for others. Because of course, a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. If you're raised in a broken home, you're taught the adverse toxic end of masculinity, to be strong, to be hard-headed, to be hot-tempered, to be someone of a strong arm. You always respond with violence. That is the same values that you will instill in the next generation. So if you ask me, it's a pandemic that needs to be solved, and it's a pandemic that needs to be solved as soon as possible.
Well, I totally agree with you that this is one issue that needs to be addressed. But two things that makes me wonder, particularly about our parents, or those from our parents' era, or those who live our grandparents' era and are still living today, is how most have shifted from the core principles that birthed a safer, a more humane, a more compassionate driven society to what we have today. During her parents' era, my sister, God rest her soul, as that when she was in school, we're told, as you're going for NYSC, for instance, there are like multiple companies trying to buy you into working with them. Multiple companies. So you now have the liberty and the luxury of sitting down to look between, company A, B, C, and D. Which one is offering the best? And which one suits your next dream, your next goal?
Which one furthers your ambitions?
Exactly. To now decide to choose. But in today's world, in Nigeria in particular, we're looking at finishing school, going for NYSC, and spending 5, 10, 15 years without finding a job. These are two different realities. The second reality, back in the days, the naira and the dollar were compatible. They were, if you could place the naira alongside the dollar, and the weight difference would not be that much compared to today. But regardless of these indicators, we still find these lapses in the mindset, in the thought pattern of our parents. But that doesn't worry me. What worries me most is the inability of today's generation, be it the baby bloomers or the Gen Zs or the millennials, the different generation, is that many have failed to realize that as a man, the environment you came from does not define who you are or who you can be. The family system or setup that produced you does not define whether or not you would become successful. Not even the fact that you grew up with your great grandmother in the village defines you. But what you intentionally decide that as an individual, as a man, this is who I want to be. This is what I want to become. And by the time my life here on earth is over and done with, I want it to be on record. In the words of one of the singers, I think it was Beyonce that sang, "I was here." Let it be known that you were here. that you touched lives,
that you left your mark on the sands of time.
On the sands of time. And this history will take into consideration the test, the trials, and the events that happened in your life. They say great men and great women are those who were tested the most by the harsh realities of life. I mean, look at the likes of Steve Harvey, for instance. A man who waited until late 30s to gain access to what he's been dreaming of all his life.
Years, exactly.
But in his 60s, he's living his best years, living his best life. One of my greatest, inspiration within the entertainment space is Oprah Winfrey. You look at a woman who had every reason to give up, every reason to become like every black girl and throw away her life, who decided that she was not going to allow the events and tests and the circumstances around her to determine who she becomes. Now, one might ask, you might want to ask, why am I bringing, Oprah Winfrey into a men's conversation? Because we are all interconnected. Steve Harvey is just one of them. There are millions of men who withstood the test. I mean, the legendary, the late Michael Jackson, we can mention them over and over again. Denzel Washington has narrated how he was considered to be a monumental failure. But one prophecy spoken at his mother's salon by an elderly woman, just believing that you can do better, and not just believing, but putting in the work and being consistent, will always get you to where you're supposed to be. And that is the thing that today's society and today's men are not trained to understand. So I started doing a business for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and I don't have a car. I said, this business is not
probably
working.
In the wrong field.
Yeah, I'm in the wrong field. It's not working. It's not profitable. And then I leave there, venture into another, give it a few years. It's not working. And so, excuse me, you keep moving from one point to another without sitting down to really ask yourself, who am I? What was I created to solve? What can I do to change the narrative, to change, the whole perception of my life, and be a better version of myself, and then give that version of myself to the service of mankind? The moment we get a lot more people doing that, then I would say we have a generation of men who are willing to build themselves and build others up.
Well, it is, as you've said, is when we get to that point, I do hope that society would evolve to the point where we begin to ask these questions, because as of right now, society is at a point where men aren't really allowed to look inward. Men are instead supposed to look outward. What can I do for others? What can I do to better the life of others? What can I do to better the life of my wife? What can I do to, after all, they say happy wife, happy life.
Well,
what can I do?
I'd like to differ. Happy me, happy wife.
Happy wife, exactly.
Happy home.
You see, and that is an example of, I need to be a good person in order to be good to others. I mean, the good book said it itself. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you cannot love yourself, you cannot love another person. And how do you love yourself? It is by knowing yourself. It's by asking yourself the important questions. What makes me happy? How do I get joy? What brings me pain? What brings me sadness? It's when you regulate these things, you understand these things, that you can then know how to give that to others. Because if, for example, you're the kind of person who, certain acts put you off, they upset you. If as a man you don't know that, you may just be confused. Why am I getting angry? She just said this. She only said this. She only did this. I'm not supposed to be this angry. Meanwhile, you don't understand yourself.
Where your triggers are coming
Exactly. You don't understand yourself. You don't know that maybe this is a trait that perhaps traumatized me as a child. Perhaps this is a trait that I hate, I despise. But because you don't know yourself enough to come to that conclusion, you won't know how to regulate or handle those emotions. So until we get to that point when men are advised and encouraged to look into themselves, love themselves, ask themselves the questions to better themselves in order for them to better society and better their families. Well, until then, I really don't know what the future of a man would be.
Well, the future of a man will definitely be bright, because we'll be here to guide each and every one of us, especially those of us who come from dysfunctional backgrounds, to toe the right path. This is where we put the brakes on the first segment of the program, talking about men's power. I do hope you've taken one or two lessons to redefining who you are as a man and what you should be known for as a man, and what message should be spoken about you by the time you're done with your duties here on earth. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll delve right in to the second segment of the program. And of course, we're talking about the event and test. And on the event and test segment, we have a juicy story we'd like to share and get your thoughts and opinion. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
It was Billy Graham who said, "A good father is one of the most unsung, unpraised, unnoticed, and yet one of the most valuable assets in our society." Pam Brown added that dads are most ordinary men turned by love into heroes, adventurers, storytellers, and singers of songs. The truth is that every father who has led an amazing family is just an ordinary man who, in submission to God, has done extraordinary things. Father's Day is an annual holiday dedicated to honoring fathers, fatherhood, and the paternal bonds that shaped families and communities. The modern holiday was first inspired by Mother's Day and took root in the early 20th century. The first event, the earliest recorded celebration, was a special Sunday sermon in July 1908 at a West Virginia church honoring 362 men who died in the Consolidated Coal Company mines. It is widely observed globally, predominantly on the third Sunday in June. It is important to note that after the first celebration, the campaign for an official day was led by Sonora Smart Dodd in Spokane, Washington, inspired by her widowed Civil War veteran father who raised her and her siblings. She successfully advocated for Washington's first statewide celebration on June 19, 1910. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson issued the first presidential proclamation establishing the third Sunday in June as Father's Day. It was officially signed into permanent law in 1972. Symbolism. While some observe the tradition of wearing a red rose if their father is living, or a white rose in remembrance of a deceased father, many women, children, and families celebrate by cooking meals, sharing gifts, and treating men to special outings. While the world celebrates every third Sunday in June, Catholics celebrate fatherhood on March 19th, being St. Joseph's Day, a practice brought by the Church to all Catholics around the world. As we celebrate the 2026 Father's Day, let us all remember that a father's tears and fears may be unseen, but his love, his care, and protection remains as a pillar of strength throughout our lives. To all the irresponsible men and fathers all over the world, receive common sense and wisdom. Above all, submit to God's guidance and do right by the family and society. And to every father who has done an incredible job of raising the right family, continue to rest in your honor. Receive the grace and strength to do more. May we be a generation of women and men and children who honor, cherish, treasure, and reciprocate this gesture of unconditional love and devotion of our fathers to family life and the overall actualization of our dreams and aspirations. Happy Father's Day to you, the family pillar.
Many thanks for staying with us. Of course, it's still Nate's Wall on CEMTV, and we're heading straight to the second segment talking about event and test. Now, Tammy is going to help us with that story, and I really love to hear your thought, but I have my own opinion though.
Yeah.
But tell us.
So just to give you a quick rundown of the story, a man was visited by his girlfriend, and he refused her entry into the home, and she was asking, yelling, in fact. The video will be played for you shortly. She was yelling, in fact, saying how the man would he's cheating on her, perhaps he's not doing something he is meant to do. If not, why would he stop her from going into the home? So after hearing that, he allowed her. He was like, you know what, fine, come into the house. But if you come into the house and when you find out that nothing is going on, you'll see that I'm not cheating, everything is good, but you're still going to skedaddle, you're still going home. She came in, searched and searched and searched and searched. He allowed her. She searched the bathroom, searched the kitchen, searched the bedroom, searched the parlor, and just encouraged her to check the backyard. There's a lot of places for you to check. And if you want to check my neighbor's house as well, I can help you do that. And afterwards, he then told her she needs to leave. And when she questioned him as to why do you want me to leave? And he said, because I value my privacy. I've told you several times over and over again, you need to call me, text me, or reach out to me one way or the other before you come to my house. Because I'm in a relationship with you doesn't mean I will not be given my own privacy. And from the way the video went about, it turns out that was the end of that relationship. A lot of people are saying that relationship perhaps was already on a rocky path and was already coming to an end, but that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, let me move to Francis. Quickly, your opinion on that video. Do you think the man was wrong? Because 90% of the women in that comment section was like, the man is toxic, the man hates her, the man perhaps was cheating or something else altogether. It's only about 1 or 2 women that talked about how they also value their privacy to that point that they don't even like it when their boyfriend visits them without prior noticing. That if you tell me you're coming, I will allow you to show up. Of course, I will tell you, sure, come in, but don't try to get me by surprise. I may not be in the mood to talk to you, and I won't be able to welcome you. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think perhaps he overreacted, or there was a better way he could have handled it?
Well, I'll speak from 2 perspectives. One as a relationship coach and counselor, and 2 as a man or a woman. Now, considering the fact that he had already given her the spare key to his house. We've all watched the video now. We've seen the spare key to the house. That level of trust and confidence means we are past the playing stage to ownership stage, which means she owns him and he owns her. Because you cannot entrust your house key to somebody you do not give express permission to come around anytime, any day. Now, while we might bring the question of privacy or invasion of privacy, I mean, the moment you get into another person's life, that word privacy is taken out. As much as people want to wait till marriage, it starts from relationship. If you can't be completely open, transparent, and accountable to each other during relationship, then you would not do that during marriage. It would be a different ballgame if he had not gone ahead to give her the spare key.
Spare key, yeah.
Now, on the other side, the question of privacy, or rather, I'll come from the angle of, as a man who has given a directive. Your wife to be, or your wife should be able to get a directive from you once and act on that directive. So, if you're speaking, coming from that perspective, I would understand why the man says you must go. Because you can't go disrespecting your man, you can't go disrespecting his authority and expect that he will not react. So on that end, or from that angle, I will understand his standpoint. But given the circumstance, regardless, that relationship could have been served if he took a step back and she took a step back. And don't forget, Tammy, sometimes we want to sprinkle a surprise on our loved one. Oh, you're just around the corner and you want to, bump in and say, hello.
Yeah.
I know I didn't tell you I was coming, but here am I got you this. So from all angle, she did the right thing, took a right intention, but because of his standpoint, it was misinterpreted. I feel the whole issue could have been sorted out if they both took a step back, sat down, and then look into the different sides of the story.
All right, I guess that's Francis' take on the matter. I do have a lot to say, but this is what I would round up with. All I would say is, if you're not yet married, if you have not put a ring on the finger yet, that's absolute encapsulment of there is no privacy whatsoever anymore. I believe it hasn't been entrenched yet, because you're not yet bound by the laws or the power of matrimony. Even when you look at things from the biblical aspect, until you're married, you don't really have legal right or ownership over an individual, or as they would, over you. So where, like Francis said, where there will be an issue is because, of course, he gave her a spare key. He was like, yeah, giving someone a spare key is as good as telling them come whenever you want. So I think that's where he made the mistake of giving her a spare key. But if he hadn't given her a spare key, I would have stood with him 100% to tell him that, yeah, sure, I agree with you. You're not married yet, so you do have some semblance of a private life when it comes to your personal space and your domicile. But the fact that he gave her a spare key just throws all of that out the window for me.
Well, he does throw all of that out, and this is where we draw the curtains. Of course, before we come to the conclusion of the show this evening, we'll take you through, the comment segment and also hear your thoughts and your contributions on this matter. But this is where we draw the curtains, and it's been wonderful, leading you on to the maiden edition of Main's Wall on CEMTV. Keep it locked down. We'll be right here every other Mondays and Thursdays to keep you company, as well as keep you updated with what is happening to each and every one of us as a man. I remain Francis Oyima Adet, and I've been doing this with...
And of course, I am Emmanuel Tamanor Tenari, but you can call me Tammy for short.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Be the man that changes the world.
Is it time? I can't wait to see it.
Voice of the people, stories that matter.
Oh wow!
Truth in every moment.